What's going on YouTube? Kronos here, and welcome back to another Pso2 video. So today's video is going to be one we've done before. We've done it in multiple episodes previously. It's another weapon progression video. So we're going to jump through these fairly quick. If you've ever watched one of these videos beforehand, essentially what I do is try to toss up my recommendations for low tier going in towards endgame weapons, but then talk about all of the endgame weapon options that we currently have in the global version of Pso2. So the early side of weapons itself is going to be fairly brief. You kind of can smash past these weapons fairly fast. It's really easy to get a decent weapon and move forward. But there are quite a few weapons that have popped up that are actually really powerful, really useful, and that work different on multiple different classes. It isn't just, hey, use the 15 star that's currently available to trade in for. There's a little bit more nuance than that. So I think I covered everything. I'm pretty sure I've got everything, but if I happen to miss any specific weapon that maybe I didn't call out or anything like that, feel free to toss it in the comments below and your reasons behind why you feel like it's important to know about it. But let's get started. So as always, we're on the Pso2 Wiki. Now this is the global wiki. I did grab little snippets of certain weapons from the JP Wiki just so we can see them in full. Just because the global wiki didn't have a more detailed version of it available just yet. They do fall behind on those a little bit, but they are trying to get as much out as possible since we're getting so much content in such a short period of time. However, let's go and jump into, again, the reason we do this is specifically so people can see where we're getting this information from. It's not just pastes of, hey, this is what it is, here's what this actually does, so on and so forth. This is so just in case you come across a question on your own, you think, hey, look, how can I figure this out? You can see pretty much what I'm doing to get all this information yourself, and you guys will know where to look for, or you'll know where to go, you'll know what to look for, so on and so forth. So I don't know why I have this page open with weapons. We're going to talk about, oh yeah, I'm keeping this on the side. To start things off, we're actually going to talk about the non-collect, or I won't say collection, but the non-Zeg weapons that you can get with the different classes itself and how they're useful, because a few of them did pop up. So there's one series that a lot of classes are going to use, and I'm going to use the Wire Lance as an example, is the Guinness series. The Guinness series weapons are absolutely fantastic weapons. Now, they're not fantastic for the same sake you normally would when it comes to a weapon for damage. What these weapons allow you to do is they're essentially the new type of what they call a PP battery. Essentially, it lets you recover your photon points ridiculously fast, and I'll explain how this works as briefly as I possibly can. So they have a potential, increases your PA power by 8%, doesn't really matter. You take damage when using a PA or technique and reduce the PP consumption by 45%. Now, you actually couple this, now let's see here real quick. Guinness weapons are S-grade augmented weapons, and they have an S2 and an S3 slot. If you couple this with the S2 and S3, and they're both the same, am I on the global, or I think I'm on JP right now? Yeah, let me switch to the global one really fast here. Sorry about that, guys. Again, it wouldn't be one of my videos if we were completely prepared. I think it's a Lucent Domain, Lucent Adversity. Here we go. So the way this essentially works is you have Lucent Adversity on your actual weapon itself. It recovers 15% of your max PP when you take damage. So this is the same thing that's available. We'll actually look at both of them. Lucent as adversity, same thing as an S3. So S2 and S3 are exactly the same. So basically, and they stack, which is the great part. So basically, when you take damage, you recover 30% of your max PP. That means whenever you use a PA, you take damage, and when you take damage, you recover a bunch of PP back. See how it kind of works out? Classes that can use text take advantage of this ridiculously fast, where you're basically tapping, like say something like Nabarta type 0, which is very quick. You're tapping Nabarta type 0 and instantaneously regenerating all of your PP back with like 2 taps, maybe 3 taps. Some classes can use these weapons to be able to just travel for free. Something like a Hunter, which has a very cheap travel ability, can use these wire lances and travel infinitely moving forward. Classes that have access to text for movement can switch to their Guinness weapons, and they can use text to basically fly forward, and it almost basically costs nothing. I think Safoi type 0 is the one that's very commonly used. So it's really powerful, very helpful, very useful, and doesn't require you to have damage on the weapon itself. It's there just to regen all of your PP back damn near instantaneously. Now, every class in the game can take advantage of this except for 2, if I remember correctly, and that would be Etoile and Luster. And Luster's not out yet, so just Etoile at the moment that can't take advantage of this. Every other class should have a Guinness that is capable of using. I'm trying to think of another one that wouldn't. no, everything should be able to. So every class combination should have access to one of these. So on the topic of wire lances, actually, there's a really, really good wire lance that popped up for hunters. So the Akira I'm not even trying to pronounce what this actual name is. Essentially, it just makes so when you heavenly fall, you deal a bunch more damage. You drop down lasers on top of your target. It's really, really cool, very strong. Well, actually, we'll read through the exact way it works exactly to give you the exact names for it. So this potential has the following effects. When heavenly fall is cast at max gear, once connecting to the target and landing, red beams resembling the attacks of the Armada Sector 1 and 2 bosses will fire off in an area around the user, dealing range damage up to 3 times per enemy, and the gear will be fully emptied. Multiple beams cannot hit the same target, even if the gear is not maxed using the heavenly fall. Even if the gear is not maxed on using heavenly fall, but becomes maxed during the animation, such as highs or rise, or anything along those lines, the effect will not activate. It requires using heavenly fall while at max gear, and the gear must be removed regardless of the amount, or hunter gear save. So basically, you have to have max gear, then use the ability itself. It drains all of it. It uses that little combination. It's actually pretty cool. But it's a cool weapon. It's something nice to have. It's very, very strong for wire lance hunters. So super awesome choice to have now. Here's a bit of a weird choice. And this is one that was brought up to me a while back by a friend. Essentially, this is Seinburn. So it's a gun slash. Now, I'm probably thinking, why should I care about this gun slash itself? So it's a bit of a meme. Essentially, what it does is after the 30 seconds of the quest starting, the first normal attack you do creates an explosion that inflicts massive damage to the enemy in a wide range. After the explosion, all attacks deal 1 damage. Basically, this is a weapon that if the boss wastes 30 seconds of your time at the start of the quest, you can just slap it once and then switch weapons. Some classes it's really, really useful. Other classes it really doesn't matter. If you don't have a precast setup, which to be fair, just about every class should have a precast setup. And when I say a precast setup, basically what that means is being able to press an ability and time it for when the boss becomes targetable. That way you do your damage instantaneously. It's usually a very large hit. For classes that don't have access to this, you can also just use a gun slash in some cases. That I think it's like precise shot or something along those lines, or that charge shot is crazy amounts of damage. And most classes or most people are going to have a gun slash as a backup for one reason or another. So in worst case scenario, if you don't have one of those, you can always use one of these. So this is kind of the only reason it's here. It's not exactly going to be useful in a ton of situations, but I thought it'd be kind of funny to mention that it is available. And most of these items are available on the market if they're not a 15 stars. This is purchasable on the market. I'm not sure how much it is. I haven't checked and the servers are down, unfortunately, so I can't tell you exactly. So we're getting Rancor. This weapon's a bit interesting. Essentially what happens is whenever you, oh god, is it Desperado Dance on Global, I think? But yeah, when your gear gauge is level 3 or higher, you get this ability on Desperado Dance, or it's called Shift Period on the JP servers. Essentially what happens is you're invulnerable throughout the attack animation, as well as you shoot out the lasers from the Desperado Dance or Shift Period, and they all home in on a single target. So they actually end up being really, really strong. They're fairly powerful to use. It's a fairly powerful set of TMGs, so keep that in the back of your mind. I'm not sure how they match up to everything else, but I heard whispers of it actually being the best choice available for you right now. Though I would probably have it as a weapon you swap to use for that ability and maybe swap to something else. So it just depends. It is supported by S1 through S3, but there are some really, really good S4 and S5 stuff for TMGs, so I would not count that out just yet. And these are a little bit more easy to come by at the moment. So we have this Talus. This Talus is actually pretty amazing. So the reason I brought this up was it's a Talus that has a very special SAF, not SAF, I'm sorry, as very special potential. It grants D-ban when casting Shifta and reduces the PP consumption by Shifta 50%. So basically, it just allows you to cast Shifta, and you automatically get D-ban back. And you're thinking to yourself, well, I mean, that's great. Of course, techers are going to be able to do that itself, but this is also an all-class Talus, meaning that classes that don't have access to this by themselves are able to go ahead and use this to gain all their buffs. Now, I don't recommend it for everyone. Actually, I would recommend personally. I didn't actually bring them up here, and I'm probably going to bring them up in just a moment, but there's another series of weapons that you can utilize for gathering Shifta on yourself. But being able to use this at the very start of the quest, maybe you're a techer that can just cast one buff, don't have to worry about swapping to both. It is a bit of laziness, but it actually does make things fairly nice. And if you're a class that cannot use Genin for PP battery shenanigans, this has an S1 through S3, which all the PP battery stuff is between S1 and S3. Oh, also the fact that this is all class, it also has its photon art set to Shifta. So like no matter what your combination is, as long as you have this Talus, you'll be able to to cast the buff of Shifta, and you'll automatically get debanned as well. So it's a fairly useful Talus to have. I think it's mostly useful for techers, just out of convenience, to be honest. But in some cases, you might want this instead. Before I jump into this last one, I'm actually going to go ahead and bring up this other weapon series that I forgot to mention beforehand. I'm going to specifically bring up jet boots of it, because I thought about it right ahead of time too. So you might have heard, if you've been playing the game for a while, some what are the words I'm looking for? Some more seasoned players or veteran players talk about Shifta boots. Now, these weapons have popped up they're called blood weapons. They're essentially all class weapons that have 1 PA attached to them. In the case of the blood reflex, the jet boots, they have strike gust. And if you've never played bouncer before, basically strike gust, whenever you press your weapon action button, causes you to cast Shifta. That's whatever Shifta that you have. Even in situations where you do not have access to being able to cast techs, you can use this to very quickly cast Shifta on yourself and weapon swap over to something else. So, i.e. Shifta boots. Fairly useful, very beneficial to have a pair of these, especially if you can't cast Shift on yourself, especially in a situation right now where we don't have access to Skydan's Moon, which is auto cast your buffs on you while you're in the air for 2 seconds. So, fairly useful pair of boots to have. I know I have a pair of them myself, and I know a lot of other players will as well. Probably thinking, why bother with Shifta boots when this exists? Well, to be perfectly honest, this is just faster. And if you only care about Shifta, you can just pop this and then weapon swap really quickly. If you use this, you weapon swap, you immediately lose the field, and you lose the benefit of the buffs itself. If you weren't aware, buffs are field abilities, and when they tick on you is when they actually increase the amount of time that they will stay on you. So if the field goes away immediately, then you actually aren't getting the full duration for the buff itself. So something to keep in mind if you weren't aware. But moving on to the last weapon of the set, the Serpent Cleanser. So I'll be honest with you, these are probably the best jet boots in the entire game when it comes to playing bouncer. Serpent Cleanser is really, really, really powerful. Essentially what it does is it gives you 8% increased power, which is awesome, but it also hastens the startup speed of Vinto, which is your jet sweep kick on global. What that basically means is your jet sweep kick is just faster to charge, but that's not all. It also makes it bigger. You get a wider sweeping kick. It doesn't reduce its damage whatsoever. You basically get an AoE kick that's faster for free. It's S1 through S3, so fairly powerful S1 through, or fairly powerful slots there. And you basically get to stack this with everything else. And I'm going to go into this more in the video itself later on when we talk about the bouncer skill trees. But bouncer sub phantom with Serpent Cleanser is actually the most ridiculous speed of attack I've ever seen in my life. Essentially what ends up happening is you cast the tech with a specific S6 on your back unit. You end up getting mostly full on your focus gauge. You jump cancel the tech into a kick and straight into a Vinto, or jet sweep kick, excuse me. And because you're using rapid strike, it's also increasing the charge time of your jet sweep kick, along with this increasing the charge time of your jet sweep kick, because those do stack, and then you kick really, really hard. And then you repeat that over and over and over again fairly quickly. So it's insane. I've also been told there is, and I've seen it beforehand, I've seen it explained to me, and I really didn't get it personally when I tried it. Honestly, that's part of the reason I don't really play bouncer anymore in the first place. I really didn't want to learn it anyway. Even with boots that are stronger than these, you still hold on to these boots because there's apparently like this weird interaction with weapon swapping with these boots for those Vintos, but also still getting the damage from the other weapon itself. It's really complicated. I highly recommend checking out the Bouncer Discord if you want to figure out more about that stuff, but these are really, really powerful. Unless they patched it, maybe I missed that, who knows, but as of right now, these are like the best boots in the game. It's insane. So we've got through all of the specialized weapons and it's 13 minutes in. Great. Let's talk about all of the weapons we have available to us right now to craft from SEGA. Well, good news is it's not a whole lot to worry about. So we've got a couple of weapons that have popped up. Of course, we have our Atlas, we have our Trailblazer, we have Ophistia. Those are, I still say that on arrival. But what's popped up in the Rising Weapon Badge shop has been the Novel Sword. The Novel Sword is actually what's used to upgrade into the Rivalite weapon. Now, you know how I mentioned a while back, intro to 15-star weapon, if I was going to say one? This is probably about where I would start here. Would either be Novel Sword or would be one of these weapons here, the Millionaire weapons. Now, I do believe these weapons technically would be a bit stronger. However, going with the Novel Sword or Novel weapons in general, a little bit more economic when it comes to your costs, because this weapon is going to upgrade into your better choice weapon itself, the Rivalite weapon. So putting a little bit of time into this is going to get you the better weapon itself. However, these are currently a collection file and come at plus 30. So they're kind of free. All it requires you to do is to grab the collection file, or the collection folder, excuse me, and to do the Armada EQ. It usually finishes before the EQ is even over, in most cases, depending upon how many runs you get. So worst case scenario, it finishes by the time you finish the EQ. Best case scenario, it finishes like halfway through. So you can usually get these weapons fairly easily. Maybe they're good alt weapons for you to grab a hold of, but they are fairly powerful. And in case you're wondering, is there any difference between the two of these? No, it's just the requirement that, to use the weapon itself. Damage is the same, potential is also the same, and so is the SAF. The difference are the colors. The Cheval weapon, just to make sure, just to kind of note on it itself, it's kind of, how can I explain this weapon? I know there's another weapon that's similar to this, but it's kind of like the inverse of it. Essentially, it reduces your PP to 0 when you use a PA, and then your PAs are like, I believe, 1 PP or something along those lines, while you're spamming for a while to while it's auto recovering PP consistently. So basically, it allows you. Oh yeah, it's basically the inverse of a light stream, essentially, or of a Trailblazer. It drops to 0 and tries to boost itself back up to 1, boost itself back up to full while you're trying to spend PP as much as possible. So it's a pretty cool weapon. It might be useful in some situations, but honestly, I really am not paying too much attention to these. I think it's pretty decent as a wand as well. If I remember correctly, I think this is a wand too. Let's see real quick. Wands. Yeah, as a wand as well. It's a pretty solid wand. Pretty powerful. It's only S1 though, so that's kind of holding it back a little bit, but again, teaches their own. So let's talk about the reason we're here, the Revelate weapons. So a lot of people have misconceptions about Revelate weapons, what it should get, what you shouldn't get. I would highly recommend, again, checking out your own class Discord when it comes to these weapons, or checking out class guides when it comes to these individual weapons, but I'm going to talk about what makes them good. So Revelate weapons are S4 and S5 weapons. Of course, you already know about the S4 slot. The S4 slot has been mostly, up to this point, utility, whether that be life leech, whether that be PP management, so on and so forth, but it's actually moving into damage. There are a lot of S4s that actually can deal some pretty significant damage or be fairly useful. I'm not going to go over all of them. Again, it depends on your class combination, how you're using the weapon itself. But the big takeaway is the S5 slot. The S5 slot essentially ends up being what the unique weapon potentials were from the previous 14 stars, slightly nerfed, but on stronger weapons. For example, in this case, actually I'm going to use the Soaring Blades as the example here because it's easiest to understand, since most of us who watch this channel know about Jupiter Talus. As you can see, Revelate Soaring Blades S5 is Lightning Pursuit. However, you can see it's only 200% power as opposed to Jupiter Talus, which I believe is 350 at max grinds. We can actually find out by just scrolling up. Let's see real fast. Jupiter Talus, yeah, 350 at max. So it's at 350 at max versus 200. Now you're thinking it's lower, yes. However, this is a completely stronger weapon, has access to the S4. So it is extremely powerful. It's definitely useful. I could have come out with this video a little sooner, guys. I know people have been like jumping to try to make these weapons itself. Unfortunately, I've been a little bit behind. I apologize. I'm going to be getting caught up as much as possible fairly soon. But hopefully these weapons are going to be a little bit easier to make after the patch. Right now the servers are down. I'll even pop over to the website just to double check and see if anything's come up. It currently hasn't. We're hoping to see some information. Apparently an article popped up, but it was deleted. So we'll have to wait a little while before we find out more about that. But either way, when it comes down to these weapons, they're really strong. Will you be able to make multiple? Maybe. It depends on how we get these Revelate unlockers. I know there's currently one that'll be up for titles. There's one currently in the mission pass as long as you get it before the 6th of next year. So before January 6th. So you have access to 2 right there. I would say figure out what weapons you want to go with. Look at all the S4s and S5 options. Make sure, because I've seen this happen a lot. Fill out your S grade augment slots. It is not worth to skip these slots for another augmentation. They are extremely powerful. They are the most damage you're going to get in most cases. Do not skip these slots. Fill them, then worry about the rest of your augmentations, especially if you're making something like the novel weapons. I'm probably going to go over a video making my novel or making my Revelate weapon, but especially if you're doing something like this, I wouldn't even recommend fixing this yet. I would say set it up, get an S4 in it, cool, and then just sit. Wait until you get it upgraded to the 15 star, get your S4 and S5, and then augment the weapon itself. That way you're not losing out on anything. So just keep that in mind as you're going forward. I'm trying to think of anything else we're missing. Oh yeah, its potential is also kind of insane as well. It's 20% crit, 23% power, and I'm sorry, no, 20% crit, 16% power, and 15% PP cost reduction. So this is the one we're going to have access to. The reason why I feel like these weapons are extremely powerful is its plus potential versus the next weapon that we're going to have access to afterwards. So After this, I think our next big set of content is probably going to be moving towards divide quests. Divide quests have a new line of weapon called the still weapon. Now, the still weapon is strong. However, it's inconsistent when it comes to its damage. Basically, you have damage reduction. If you take damage, you lose damage, you gain damage reduction. So what ends up happening is if you take the calculation of the plus potential from Liberate versus Still, you actually end up more consistency using your Rivalate weapons. So a lot of people are actually going to be making Rivalate weapons and keeping those until the next series after Still comes around. Now, I will say, just as a disclaimer, I'm not telling you to skip a weapon series. You may make the weapon as a secondary weapon. It might be useful as just like a side weapon for another class, but keep in mind that technically with this setup, this is more consistent overall when it comes to potentials. However, not every single class is going to use that extra 20% crit and that increased power the same way. So the increased power is nice, but 20% crit rate is not all going to be the case for every single class. Some classes will want the still weapon instead. And as much as we're going to be doing divide, and as easy as it is to get the weapons that usually were a pain in the neck to get to make the still weapons originally, I don't even think it's going to be worth skipping anyway. I'm probably still going to make a still something. I don't know what it's going to be, but it is going to be my main weapon. My main weapon is definitely going to be a Rivalate Soaring Blades. So again, take a look at your class guides, jump into your class discords, have a chat with some of your friends, see what your options are available to you. It's not the same for every single class. Everyone should kind of figure out what's going to work best for them, so on and so forth. Whew, that was a long one. So as always, guys, a like on the video is much appreciated. Absolve you half of your ad block guilt. The other half is absolved by subscribing. I'm not going to go in the full spiel, but guys, I haven't made a video in a while. And it does kind of hurt the analytics a bit not to make videos consistently. So videos aren't going to be doing as great as I usually do, but we're going to get back into it or jump back into things. So if ever you've shown before, or you wanted to show support beforehand and you haven't, now is definitely the time to do so. It helps me out a ton. If you guys want to keep up with any of the content itself, of course, subscribe, bell icon, Discord, as well as Twitter. I'll have links to all those places in the video description. If you have any questions or if I missed anything, feel free to toss them in the comments below. Thanks again for joining me on this video, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Peace out.